Since you're listening to this talk, I can tell that you are pretty open-minded. Good for you. Sadly though, that's not the case for everyone. Narrow-minded people, unfortunately, are far too common. I'd actually go as far as to say that the lion's share of the population are narrow-minded. Narrow-minded people are everywhere. You might even personally know some. Narrow-mindedness being so common and prevalent is a dangerous thing for everyone, since narrow-mindedness causes all sorts of problems. It can even sneak up on you, no matter how open-minded you are. So in this talk, we'll explore what it entails and what you can do about it. Listen to the talk to learn more. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Philosophy Podcast, a bite-sized weekly podcast focused on empowering you to think better and upgrade your life. So let's talk about narrow-mindedness. There are lots of reasons why narrow-mindedness is bad for everyone. Being narrow-minded creates all sorts of problems, including increasing conflict. It breaks down communications. It encourages discrimination and bigotry, raises stress levels, it limits, if not stalls, innovation, and a whole lot more. Let's have a look at them in more detail. So narrow-mindedness causes and actually increases conflict. Have you ever seen people get into fights over the most random, even smallest of things? Nearly always you will find narrow-mindedness as a core cause of that conflict. When your mind is closed off, it becomes easy to take even the smallest of things personally, which then causes strife, stress, anger, and eventually even fights. Miscommunication, another big reason why conflicts happen, also is a common result of narrow-mindedness, and more of that next. So, another challenge that narrow-minded creates is that it breaks down communications. This is pretty much an inevitable result of having a closed mind. When your mind is closed off, things become very binary and black and white. However, there is a problem with that style of thinking, and it's that the world is not usually black and white. Either or thinking styles might work for softwares and robots, but humans are not designed to function that way. There are nuances and feelings and many variables that can change even the exact same situation from time to time and from person to person. So narrow-mindedness and having a closed mind can cause all sorts of miscommunications and missed signals. But that's not all. Having a narrow mind will also make it hard to see other people's perspectives, which is the worst thing you can do if you want to foster good communication. There are other negative ways too that narrow-mindedness affects communications, but it should be evident by now that having a narrow mind is bad for communication. Conversely, having an open mind promotes good communication. Let's look at that next. So the next challenge that narrow-mindedness creates, the next big one, is that it encourages discrimination and bigotry. This is one of the biggest dangers of narrow-mindedness. This cause and effect should be obvious, especially since people with an open mind are hardly ever nearly as prejudiced as people with narrow minds. When your mind is closed off to possibilities and changes, it can be hard to accept anything different. This has resulted in outrageous, terrible, and horrible consequences throughout history, like how people are jeered at just because they're different, or minority ethnic groups are marginalized and discriminated against, or even how black people used to be lynched, or in extreme example, how hundreds of thousands of people were butchered just because they were from a different tribe. Extreme doctrines are nothing but extreme narrow-mindedness, because people who are open-minded would never judge others negatively and never extremely just because they are different. And they most certainly won't resort to violence over such a trivial thing. The truth of the matter is that diversity and our differences make the world a better and more interesting place. If we were all meant to be of the same religion or color or whatever else that causes divisions and discriminations, we would have been born that way, but that's not the case. Narrow-mindedness in this sense isn't just bad, but can even be dangerous. In fact, it has been dangerous throughout history. I'll just add one more thing before I talk about the next point, and it's that no one likes being treated badly. No one. No one likes being discriminated against and marginalized, so it is only fair that others are treated with the same level of understanding and respect. Don't you agree? Okay, enough said. On to the next one. So the next challenge that narrow-mindedness creates is higher stress levels. Let's unpack how this works. When someone is narrow-minded, it becomes easy to misunderstand things, get aggravated about things that are different, or even take offense at the smallest of things. And guess what all of these things have in common? Yes, you guessed it right. They all have stress in common. Negative reactions like aggravation, hostility, and so on pretty much always cause stress. But that's not where it ends, because having a narrow mind piles on even more stress from factors like miscommunication and even prejudice, which are direct results of narrow-mindedness, as I mentioned earlier. So even from a stress and peace of mind perspective, even from a personal perspective, it makes sense to broaden your horizons and open your mind. Another big challenge of narrow-mindedness is that it stalls innovation and creativity. So last but not least is the impact narrow-mindedness has on creativity. Do you know what one of the prerequisites of creativity is? It's to have an open mind. When you keep your mind open, it helps you be open to possibilities. It helps you see different perspectives and different ways things work, and it makes it easier for you to be creative. Conversely, having a narrow mind makes it challenging, if not impossible, to be creative and innovative. This might seem like a small thing, but it is not, especially when you consider the fact that this creativity can and will also impact your ability to solve problems in your own life, and even in your work. The more narrow-minded you are, the harder it is to find solutions to challenges. You can pretty much forget coming up with out-of-the-box solutions, since that has open-mindedness as a prerequisite. But when you keep your mind open, it becomes easier to find solutions to even the most challenging of situations. It should be obvious by now that being narrow-minded doesn't help, but it does harm, and can harm a lot. What's worse though is that the harm isn't just usually limited to the narrow-minded person themselves, but it can harm others too. In that sense, narrow-mindedness is a potent infection that negatively impacts not just the narrow-minded people, but also the people around them. It's an infection. Some might think that it's only the people around the narrow-minded person who suffers, but that's not the case at all, as I mentioned earlier. Cause and effect is part of pretty much everything that happens in this world, and narrow-mindedness isn't exempt from that rule. Doing bad gets you bad. It's really as simple as that. Narrow-mindedness can even start a negative chain reaction of bad results, mainly because it's human nature to respond to bad things badly. This is why aggressive behavior usually is met with aggressive behavior. Most people won't just turn the other cheek. In fact, they do the opposite. When we experience something we don't like, our reaction is hardly ever a happy one. You might have also noticed that narrow-minded people are often grumpy or angry. You can pretty much guarantee that narrow-minded people experience more stress than broad-minded people, as I mentioned earlier. This is because it's easier to come to terms with changes when you keep an open mind. Whereas when you are rigid in your thinking, coming to terms with and accepting changes becomes much, much harder. Flexibility and adaptability aren't really common traits of narrow-minded people, and this rigidity can create all sorts of challenges throughout one's life. Narrow-minded people only see their side of the story and are only open to perspectives, opinions, and information that fit their pre-existing beliefs. There is really no room for new concepts or ideas when your mind is closed off. This is not just challenging for others, but it is also bad for the person in question, since this sort of mentality can keep you stuck. Since you're listening to this talk, I have a feeling being narrow-mindedness isn't really a challenge for you. It's not really your modus operandi. That said, narrow-mindedness can creep into your psyche without you even knowing. So it's useful to have this awareness. Anytime you find it hard to accept some information or opinion, usually that's a sign that your mind is closed off about that thing. And only when you're aware of such a situation can you actually do something about it. On that note, here is something else to consider. And it's that narrow-mindedness is a sliding scale. It's not that a person is either narrow-minded or open-minded, usually. More often than not, people are more or less narrow-minded, or more or less open-minded. Even the most open-minded people can be narrow-minded about some things, for that matter. However, what I'm referring to when I say narrow-minded people are people who are either all the way or close to the narrow-minded end of the scale. People who believe in extreme ideologies, like people who are hardcore right or left-wing people, would be examples of people who are narrow-minded. This is yet another reason why it is important to stay aware of your own beliefs so that narrow-mindedness doesn't sneak into your mindset. The truth of the matter is that no one knows everything. No one. It's literally impossible to know everything. And not just because new things are getting discovered all the time. Also, refusing to accept something does not make it untrue. For example, just because some people refuse to believe that the Earth is round doesn't change its shape. The Earth is round whether people believe it or not, and closing your mind off about it will only cause confusion and can even be dangerous. Narrow-mindedness causes all sorts of problems and can even create havoc and result in tragedies. A society where the lion's share of the people are open-minded is a society that fosters positivity, happiness, creativity, innovation, and growth. That's a good society to be in. Contrast that to a society where narrow-mindedness is the main operating mode. That's a dangerous society, one that leads to disharmony, conflict, unhappiness, stress, and even the destruction of lives. This is not just a hypothesis. This has happened before and is even happening right now in some parts of the world. Rwanda's genocide is a big example of what happens when narrow-mindedness goes to the extreme. And unfortunately, history is riddled with examples like that. Too many lives have been ruined and lost even because of people's narrow-mindedness. That's why I consider it not just a bad thing but a curse. Narrow-mindedness is a curse that can and does make lives worse. So it is imperative that you do whatever you can to fight back against this bad state of mind. It's like a bug in your mind and you need to get rid of it. The most important thing you can do is become aware of how narrow-mindedness might be impacting you, both inside and outside, especially inside. If you notice that you're prejudiced about something, for example, explore that. Or maybe you find that you are not open to hearing an opposing point of view about something. If that's the case, examine that. Self-examination is a key way to fight back against narrow-mindedness. Fighting back against narrow-mindedness starts with you, and it is important to become aware of instances where narrow-mindedness might be clouding your judgment. Then there are external impacts. For instance, if someone's subjecting you or someone else to prejudice or discrimination, deal with that. You can shed light on their behavior and make the other person aware of their narrow-mindedness, as often people adopt narrow-minded beliefs without even realizing it. They are so entrenched that most people actually don't even know that they're there. It happens to the best of people. So raising awareness is important, as it is to have awareness so that it doesn't creep into your psyche. Here's the bottom line. Narrow-mindedness is a curse that can negatively impact our lives, both directly and indirectly. And it's bad for us both personally and collectively as a society. It's just bad, period. Left to its own devices, narrow-mindedness is like malignant cancer that festers and spreads. The best way for narrow-mindedness to become entrenched and grow is for us to do nothing. When you do nothing, that's when it spreads. When we do nothing, our innate narrow beliefs and ideas become entrenched even to the extreme points, which is what happens to zealots and fundamentalists. But when you shine a light on the blight that is narrow-mindedness, you help weed it out and stop it from becoming entrenched or getting worse. As for dealing with narrow-mindedness, you can do that by self-examining and self-awareness, by speaking up about it and raising awareness, and even by speaking out when you or someone else is subjected to prejudice or discrimination as a result of narrow-mindedness. Narrow-mindedness is a menace and it's a curse. The more aware we are of this negative trait, the better we can guard against it and the better we can fight against it. Remember, being open-minded is about being open to other opinions and ideas, even if those don't fit your current beliefs and paradigm. It's about being open to things, about being curious, about not being judgmental. Above all though, being open-minded is about realizing that no one is infallible and no one knows everything. And since being open-minded can help you grow and improve, be more flexible, adaptable, resilient, and even harmonious, it clearly is the better option. Being open-minded just makes your life better. It's much better than closing your mind, which makes life hard, among other things, as you learned earlier. So don't let narrow-mindedness creep into your life.